The call came on a Tuesday, just as the sky was turning a bruised purple. Rain was lashing against the windows of my small, meticulously organized apartment. I was in the middle of my own sanitization protocol, disassembling, cleaning, and oiling the tools of my trade. The burner phone, a cheap, untraceable device I used exclusively for work, vibrated against the metal tabletop with a jarring buzz. I wiped my hands on a clean cloth before answering. "Hello." The voice on the other end was anything but. It was a man, his words tripping over each other in a frantic rush.
Are you the person I was told to call? For the special cleaning services."
The code was correct. I provide post-procedural sanitization and restoration. "Who gave you this number?"
"Father Michael,"
he stammered.
He just left. He said you were discreet. He said you were the only one who could handle this."
Father Michael. A good man. A powerful exorcist. But his methods were often messy. His referrals usually meant a difficult, high-contamination job. That also meant the pay would be substantial. "I see. Where are you located?" He gave me an address, one that made me pause. Blackwood Manor, on the old coastal road. A place of local legend, a relic of old money and rumored tragedy, isolated by miles of dense, wind-battered forest. The job requires an extensive, Class 4 decontamination. My fee for such a case is non-negotiable. I named the price. It was exorbitant, designed to scare off anyone but the truly desperate. There was no hesitation on the other end.
"Fine. Yes. Whatever it costs. Just, please, can you come now?" He told me it's vital that the house is cleansed before sunrise. And you must be gone by then. Gone before the sun sets tomorrow.
Another red flag. The urgency, the specific time frame. It spoke of a containment that was, perhaps, not as contained as Father Michael's "all clear" certificate would claim. But it was not my place to question the clergy. My job was simply to clean what was left behind. "I am on my way." And I ended the call. An hour later, my unmarked van cut through the driving rain, its headlights carving a lonely path through the darkness of the coastal road. The forest pressed in on both sides, ancient trees groaning under the assault of the storm. Finally, a pair of wrought iron gates appeared, hanging open like a silent scream. I turned onto a long, gravel driveway, and the manor came into view. It was a Gothic monstrosity of dark stone and sharp angles, silhouetted against the violet sky. Every window was dark, save one on the ground floor, which cast a single, sickly yellow rectangle of light onto the rain-slicked grounds. A man stood in that light, huddled under the stone portico. As I pulled up, he rushed forward. He was older, dressed in an expensive suit that was now wrinkled and damp, his face pale and etched with a terror so profound it seemed to have aged him by decades. This was Mr. Harrington. Thank you for coming," he said, his hand trembling as he gestured me out of the rain. "The certificate," I said, my voice muffled slightly by my rain hood. It was always the first thing I asked for. "No certificate, no entry." He fumbled in his coat pocket and produced a folded piece of vellum, signed and sealed by the diocese. The "all clear." A document attesting that the entity had been successfully expelled and the premises were spiritually inert. In my line of work, it was supposed to be a guarantee of safety. I had learned, through harsh experience, that it was merely a statement of hope. "It was my daughter," Harrington whispered, his eyes darting back towards the dark house. "Clara. It was, in her." Father Michael said it was one of the old ones. He fought it for 2 days. The sounds, dear God, the sounds. He shook his head, unable to continue. "I don't need the details of the procedure, Mr. Harrington," I said, my tone gentle but firm. "I only need access. You and your family cannot re-enter until I have completed my work. I will call you on this number when it is done." "We're at a hotel in the city," he said quickly, pressing a heavy set of iron keys into my hand. "We won't be back. Not until you say so. Just, be gone by sunset tomorrow. Please. For your own sake." I nodded, watching him hurry back to his car and speed away down the driveway, leaving me alone with the house, the storm, and the lingering echo of what had transpired within its walls. I began my ritual. From the back of the van, I put on my gear. It wasn't spiritual, it was practical. A white, non-porous hazmat suit. Thick rubber gloves sealed at the wrists. Heavy, steel-toed boots. And most importantly, a full-face respirator with high-efficiency filters. Contamination, in my line of work, came in many forms: physical, biological, and some things, less tangible. The suit protected me from all of them. The heavy front door groaned open under my hand, revealing a cavernous, pitch-black foyer. I clicked on the industrial headlamp mounted to my mask. A powerful beam of clean, white light cut through the oppressive darkness. The air was cold and thick with the sharp scent of ozone, and beneath it, the bitter, metallic stench of profound fear and sickness. The residue. My job begins with an assessment. I work from the outside in, from the least contaminated areas to the epicenter of the phenomenon. I followed the trail of spiritual debris, faint thermal variations, patches of unnerving cold, the almost imperceptible vibration in the floorboards. It all led upstairs. The grand staircase was marble, but it felt soft under my boots, as if the stone itself had been weakened by the trauma. The air grew colder with every step, the bitter smell more potent. The trail ended at a single white door at the far end of the hallway. Clara's bedroom. The epicenter. As my light fell upon the door, I stopped. My professionalism, my carefully constructed detachment, faltered for a fraction of a second. The door was covered in scratches. Not small ones. Not from fingernails. These were deep, wide gouges, splintering the thick wood, as if a large animal, desperate and furious, had tried to claw its way out. But that wasn't what made the blood freeze in my veins. The scratches were on the outside of the door. I took a steadying breath, my own exhalation hissing inside my respirator. An entity is supposed to be bound to its host, to its room. It is not supposed to be roaming the house trying to get back in. I reached for the doorknob, my gloved hand hesitating just inches from the cold brass. And it was in that moment of absolute silence, broken only by the storm outside and my own breathing, that I heard it. A sound from inside the sealed, empty, and spiritually clean room. It was quiet, faint, but unmistakable. A soft, steady, rhythmic tapping, coming from the other side of the door. The 3 soft taps echoed in the cavernous silence of the manor, each one a hammer blow against my composure. My training, my years of experience, kicked in immediately, forming a bulwark against the primal urge to turn and flee. Panic is a luxury I cannot afford. My first protocol is always to eliminate the mundane. I stood perfectly still, listening. The storm was still raging, a symphony of howling wind and drumming rain. Could it be a branch, thrown against a window by the gale? A loose shutter? The old house settling? My mind catalogued the possibilities, seeking a rational explanation. But the sound had been too precise, too intentional. It lacked the chaotic signature of nature. It felt like a knock. A summons. There was no sense in delaying. The job had to be done, and the epicenter was on the other side of this door. Whatever had made that sound, I had to face it. My gloved hand closed around the cold brass doorknob, the metal seeming to leach the warmth from my very skin. I turned it slowly, deliberately. The old lock mechanism gave a loud, groaning click. The instant the latch disengaged, the tapping stopped. An absolute, profound silence fell once more, even deeper than before. I pushed the door open. The beam from my headlamp sliced into the darkness within, revealing a scene of utter, violent chaos. This was the blast zone. The room was a wreck, as if a localized hurricane had torn through it. A 4-poster bed was shattered, its heavy wooden frame splintered and thrown against the far wall. A wardrobe had been ripped from its hinges, its contents strewn across the floor like confetti. A dressing table was overturned, its mirror a spiderweb of cracks. The walls were a canvas of violence, covered in the same deep, gouging scratches I had seen on the door. It was a room that had fought back against its occupant, and lost. In the precise center of the floor, the oaken floorboards were blackened in a perfect circle nearly 2 meters in diameter. This was the focal point, the place where Father Michael had performed the final rites. The air above the circle was frigid, a pocket of unnatural winter that bit at the exposed parts of my face around my respirator. My thermal sensor confirmed it, 10 degrees colder than the rest of the room. And then there was the residue. Splattered across the ceiling and walls, like a sick form of abstract art, were streaks and droplets of a viscous, black fluid. Ectoplasmic residue. The physical manifestation of a spiritual entity under extreme duress. It was foul, corrosive, and my primary task was to neutralize and eradicate every single trace of it. I did a slow, 360-degree sweep of the room with my light. It was empty. There was no one here. No animal, no person. Nothing that could account for the tapping. I began my work, moving with practiced efficiency. My first step is always photographic documentation, followed by taking samples of the residue. As I moved through the wreckage, my light swept across the demolished wardrobe. And there, amidst the torn clothes and shattered wood, I saw it. Tucked into a dark corner, almost perfectly preserved, was a small, leather-bound book. A diary. I froze. My own voice echoed in my head, reciting the rules that have kept me alive for years. Rule number 3. Never touch the personal belongings of the afflicted. The rule exists for a reason. These objects can become imbued with psychic energy, echoes of the trauma they have witnessed. Touching them can forge a connection, an open channel to the suffering, the fear, or to the entity itself. It's a contamination of the mind, far more dangerous than any physical residue. I should have ignored it. I should have documented its location and continued with the sanitization. That was the professional choice. But this case was different. The scratches on the outside of the door. The tapping from within an empty room. Father Michael's frantic referral. Mr. Harrington's terror. The pieces didn't fit the standard narrative of a successful exorcism. The all-clear certificate felt like a lie, a desperate prayer rather than a statement of fact. My safety depended on understanding the threat. And that diary might contain the truth. I made a choice. For the first time in 7 years, I made the conscious decision to break one of my own rules. My gloved fingers carefully closed around the diary's cool leather cover. It felt strangely heavy, dense with unspoken words. I opened it to the first page. The Diary of Clara Harrington. The first several months of entries were what you would expect from a teenage girl: notes about friends, school, complaints about the isolation of living in the manor. The handwriting was neat, flowing, and cheerful. I skipped ahead. The change was jarring. The handwriting grew frantic, slanted, the words pressed so hard into the page they were almost carved. The cheerful tone was gone, replaced by something obsessive, secretive. She wrote about a new friend. He came again last night, one entry read. The storm was so loud, but I could still hear him. He taps on my window to let me know he's there. A special knock, just for me. Mom and Dad think I'm lonely. They don't understand. I'm not lonely anymore. Not since the tapper came. My blood ran cold. The tapper. I flipped through more pages, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The diary made one thing terrifyingly clear: this wasn't a case of a demonic entity forcing its way in. This was an invitation. Clara had opened the door and let the tapper into her life, into her room, into her mind. The exorcism, I realized with a jolt of horror, wasn't an expulsion. It was an eviction. Father Michael hadn't banished a demon that had invaded. He had forcibly removed a guest that Clara had welcomed. A guest that was now locked out, and wanted to come back home. My light fell on the very last entry, written the day before the exorcism began. The handwriting was a barely legible scrawl. They're bringing a priest. They want to make my friend leave. They don't understand. He's not hurting me.
He just wants a place to stay. He promised he won't leave me. He promised he would tap and tap until I let him back in. He's tapping now. I have to go let him in.
As my mind reeled from the implications, the sound came again. It wasn't coming from inside the room this time. My head snapped up. The sound was clearer now. Sharper. More insistent. It was coming from the window. My headlamp beam shot across the room, illuminating the large, grimy window pane that overlooked the stormy darkness. 2 stories up. Nothing but open air and driving rain outside. Pressed against the glass, on the outside, a pale, distorted shape appeared for a fraction of a second. It was dark and fleeting, a trick of the rain and the light. But for that one horrifying instant, I was certain I had seen the silhouette of a face. For a long second that stretched into an eternity, I was frozen. My mind, usually a fortress of logic and protocol, became a maelstrom of pure, primal fear. The distorted silhouette at the window vanished as quickly as it had appeared, but the image was burned onto the back of my retinas. The tapping continued, faster now, a frantic, desperate drumming against the glass that vibrated through the very floorboards. Then, a new sound joined the rhythm, a sound that broke my paralysis. It was a low, grating scrape. The sound of something hard and sharp dragging against the stone exterior of the house. The tapping stopped. The scraping grew louder, moving upwards. It was on the roof. In that moment, everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The scratches on the outside of Clara's door weren't the entity trying to get back in. They were from Clara, during the exorcism, desperately trying to get out of her own room to open a window, to open a door for her friend. And Father Michael, he hadn't truly banished it. He had merely locked it outside. The all-clear certificate wasn't just hope, it was a lie. A lure. They needed someone to enter the house, someone to open a door, to create a new focal point. They needed bait. And I had walked right into the trap. My mission objective changed instantly. Sanitization was irrelevant. Documentation was a luxury. Survival was now the only priority. I glanced at the chronometer on my wrist. 1:17 a.m. Hours of darkness still lay ahead. Harrington's words echoed in my mind, "Be gone by sunset tomorrow." Why sunset? What new horror did the daylight bring? I knew with chilling certainty that I could not afford to find out. I had to get out. Now. The scraping sound was moving again, scuttling down the far side of the house. It was testing the perimeter, searching for a weak point, a way in. The entire manor seemed to groan around me, the old wood and stone protesting under a pressure that wasn't from the storm. I abandoned my equipment case, my sample kits, my expensive sensors. They were just weight now. I only grabbed one thing, the diary. It was evidence. It was a warning. It was the key to understanding what was hunting me. Stuffing it inside my suit, I turned and fled the bedroom. The hallway was a tunnel of darkness beyond the beam of my headlamp. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every flicker of light playing tricks on my eyes. I moved quickly but deliberately, my boots silent on the thick carpet runner. As I passed another closed door, I heard it. A soft tap from within. And then another, from a door further down. Tap. Tap. The entity wasn't just outside anymore. Its influence was seeping through the walls, its call echoing through the empty rooms of the manor. It was everywhere. I reached the top of the grand staircase, the vast, dark foyer below seeming like a mile-deep chasm. The front door was there, a pale rectangle in the gloom, my single point of escape. I took the stairs two at a time, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the raging storm. Halfway down, the air grew thick, heavy, charged with a static pressure that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. And then it happened. The front door, my gateway to freedom, slammed shut with a concussive force that shook the entire staircase. Dust rained down from the high ceiling. The sound wasn't that of a door pushed by a draft, it was the sound of a vault being sealed. A profound, final sound. I froze on the steps, my light fixed on the door. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind and rain. Then, a new sound began. It was quiet. Soft. Coming from the front door. It was on the other side. The entity was no longer trying to get into Clara's room. It had found a new, more direct path. It was at the very threshold of the house. And I was trapped inside with it. My mind raced, desperately searching for an explanation. How did its focus shift so quickly? The diary. My blood went cold as I realized my catastrophic mistake. Rule number 3. Never touch the personal belongings of the afflicted. It wasn't just about psychic echoes. It was about consent. About connection. By opening the diary, by reading Clara's words, by engaging with her story, had I inadvertently created a new invitation. A new psychic signature for the entity to lock onto. The tapping on the front door grew louder, more insistent, turning into a heavy, rhythmic thudding. The wood began to splinter. It was coming in. I was no longer the cleaner. I was the new resident. Panic gave way to the cold, sharp clarity of a cornered animal. I ran down the rest of the stairs and sprinted down a side hallway, away from the foyer, searching for a defensible position. I found a small study. Its door was thick oak. I threw myself inside, slammed it shut, and jammed a heavy armchair under the knob. The thudding at the front door stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I stood in the middle of the dark study, my breath ragged inside my respirator, listening. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Then I heard the scraping sound. Close now. On the floorboards, in the hallway, right outside the study door. It had gotten in. I fumbled inside my suit, my trembling fingers finding the cold, smooth shape of my burner phone. Waiting for sunrise was suicide. There was only one person on this planet who might know how to fight this thing. As the first splintering crack appeared in the thick oak door, I found the number and made the call. It rang once before he picked up. Hello. The voice was old, tired. It was Father Michael. I kept my voice as low and steady as I could, even as the scratching on the door intensified into a furious clawing.
Father. This is Arthur. The cleaner.
A pause. Arthur. You should be working. Is there a problem? Yes. I said, as a large piece of wood from the door burst inwards. You're all clear for Blackwood Manor, it's void. The containment is breached. I could hear the priest take a sharp breath. But before he could speak, I finished, my voice barely a whisper.
And Father. I don't think it wants the girl anymore. I think it wants me.